Alien Queen confused by a human swelling until she realized what it meant for her. The first thing Captain Daniel Hayes felt upon regaining consciousness was pain. Deep, pulsing pain radiating from his ribs, head, and, strangely enough, lower. His vision was hazy, his limbs sluggish, as if he had been drugged. The second thing he felt? The unsettling sensation of cold, delicate fingers prodding his body. His eyes snapped open. Hovering over him was a woman. No, not a woman, an alien. And not just any alien. She was regal, striking, and inhumanly beautiful. Her smooth, silver-blue skin glowed faintly under the artificial lighting. Her long, flowing hair shimmered like liquid stardust, cascading down her back. Tall, elegant horns curved gently from her forehead, and piercing violet eyes studied him with a mixture of fascination and concern. Daniel tried to sit up, only to groan as pain flared through his body. The alien woman narrowed her eyes at his discomfort. "Do not move yet, human. Your physiology is fragile, far more delicate than I anticipated." His physiology? Daniel blinked, scanning his surroundings. The walls were sleek, metallic, and lined with unfamiliar glowing symbols. He was lying on an examination table, his uniform partially unzipped, revealing bruises along his torso. The air smelled sterile, laced with something floral? Oh, hell. He wasn't on his ship anymore. "Where am I?" he rasped, throat dry. The alien woman tilted her head, her expression unreadable. "You are aboard the royal vessel Zephyria, under my jurisdiction." His heart skipped a beat. A royal vessel? His brain struggled to catch up. He'd been on a diplomatic escort mission. Then the ambush. His ship had been crippled in the attack, alarms blaring, hull breaching, bodies thrown into the void. And now, somehow, he was here. The alien woman straightened, her elegant robes shifting as she did. "I am Queen Xenoverse, sovereign of the Zephyrian Dominion." Daniel's breath caught. A queen. He was in the custody of an alien queen. His instincts screamed danger. Royals were unpredictable, especially alien ones. The wrong move could be the last mistake he ever made. He swallowed hard. "And why am I here, Your Majesty?" Queen Yera folded her arms, her gaze flicking downward as if analyzing something. "Your body required immediate medical attention. My healers stabilized you, but you remain under my observation." That's when he noticed it, the gentle hum of energy coursing through his veins. Some kind of advanced healing tech? His injuries still ached, but his body felt different, charged, warm. However, it wasn't just his ribs or head that felt different. Something else was wrong. Daniel froze as he felt a strange tightness below his waist, a very noticeable tightness. His eyes widened. "Oh no, number, not now, not here." His pulse spiked, heat rushing to his face. His swelling condition was beyond his control, and the worst part? The alien queen was staring directly at it. Her violet eyes narrowed as she leaned closer, confusion evident on her regal features. "Curious, your vital readings indicate a surge of blood flow. Is this a sign of distress, Captain?" Daniel nearly choked on air. No, it's nothing." Xenoverse did not look convinced. Her elegant fingers hovered over his abdomen as if scanning him. "But your body temperature has increased. Your heart rate is erratic. And this," she gestured directly toward the swelling beneath the thin medical fabric covering his lower half. "This reaction, it is unexpected." Daniel wanted to die, right there, on that table. "It's, just a natural, biological response," he stammered, trying desperately to shift into a position that would hide his problem. "Nothing to worry about, really." The queen, however, seemed fascinated. Her long fingers hovered over the area again, as if debating whether to touch it. "I have never encountered such a phenomenon in human males before." Daniel's soul nearly left his body. "Oh my God, please don't." His plea was ignored. With the precision of a scientist, Xenoverse pressed a single finger against the source of his agony. Daniel nearly jumped off the damn table. He let out a strangled noise that was decidedly not dignified, gripping the examination slab as though his life depended on it. Zyra observed the response with a scholar's intrigue. Fascinating. It reacts instantly to external stimuli. This must be an involuntary function of your reproductive system. Daniel wanted the universe to implode. "Your Majesty," he croaked, voice strained with sheer humiliation. "I can explain." She interrupted, expression shifting from curiosity to realization. Her eyes widened. Her cheeks darkened. Her elegant posture stiffened. "Oh," a pause, then, "Oh." For the first time since meeting her, Daniel witnessed something he hadn't expected from the powerful and composed alien queen. Genuine flustered embarrassment. She quickly retracted her hand, clearing her throat. "I see. That was inappropriate." Daniel barely managed to breathe again, nodding furiously. "Yes, yes, Your Majesty. Very inappropriate." Zyra turned away sharply, arms folding as she refused to look at him. Her regal demeanor cracked slightly, and he could feel the awkward tension radiating from her. I had no prior knowledge of this human function," she admitted stiffly, attempting to reclaim her royal composure. "We shall never speak of this again." Daniel nodded frantically, his face burning. "Agreed, completely. Never happened." A painful silence followed. Then softly the queen muttered under her breath, words he wasn't supposed to hear. "Strange. The Zephyrian bonding archives make no mention of this, yet the reaction was unmistakably linked to attraction." Daniel froze. Wait, did she just say attraction? Before he could fully process what that meant, the doors to the chamber suddenly slid open, and a tall, armored Xylarian warrior stepped inside. "Your Majesty," the warrior bowed deeply. "Apologies for the interruption, but the High Council demands your presence immediately." Zyra Talis turned swiftly, her regal mask snapping back into place. "Understood," the warrior hesitated. "And what shall we do with the human?" She glanced at Daniel, then pursed her lips thoughtfully. He stays." Daniel blinked. "Wait, what?" Zyra tilted her head slightly, gaze unreadable. "Until I understand more about this anomaly, he is to remain under my personal study." Daniel's jaw dropped. "Personal study? Your Majesty, I swear it was just a normal—" She lifted a hand, silencing him effortlessly. "Silence, Captain. This matter requires further investigation." With one last unreadable glance, she turned and swept from the room, robes billowing behind her. The moment she was gone, Daniel collapsed back onto the table, groaning in pure mortified agony. What the hell had he just gotten himself into? Daniel Hayes had been through a lot in his life. He'd survived pirate ambushes, near-fatal space battles, and one particularly aggressive space jellyfish. But nothing had prepared him for the level of embarrassment he'd just experienced. The moment Queen Zyra Talis had realized what his condition actually was, she had frozen, turned an interesting shade of blue, and then promptly declared him her personal research subject before sweeping out of the medical chamber. And now he was alone, lying on a high-tech examination table, recovering from an awkward royal misunderstanding. Daniel exhaled slowly, pressing the heels of his hands into his eyes. This can't be happening. This isn't real. This is just a concussion dream, right? Right? The tall Xylarian warrior standing guard at the door did not answer. Instead, the imposing alien soldier, who was built like a walking slab of obsidian, just stared at him, unblinking. Yeah, not a dream. Still very real. And apparently he was now under royal observation because of a biological reaction that the Xylarians had never encountered before. He had no idea what that meant for him. All he knew was that he was in trouble. A change of circumstances. A few hours later, Daniel was summoned from the medical chamber. Or rather, dragged. The towering Xylarian guard, who Daniel had mentally nicknamed General Death Glare, had wordlessly grabbed his arm and led him through the massive crystalline corridors of the royal ship. The halls gleamed with a soft, bioluminescent glow, intricate, swirling patterns decorating the walls. The air was crisp, clean, almost too clean. Where exactly are we going? Daniel asked cautiously, trying to ignore how freakishly strong the guard's grip was. No answer. Fantastic. After several twists and turns, they reached an enormous set of towering doors, inscribed with ancient-looking symbols. The moment they approached, the doors glided open, revealing an opulent chamber. And at the center, Queen Zyra Talis, standing with regal composure, waiting for him. Her violet eyes met his the moment he stepped inside, and Daniel felt his pulse quicken involuntarily. He still wasn't used to looking at her. She was, quite frankly, breathtaking. She stood tall, poised in an ornate royal gown, her long, shimmering hair cascading over one shoulder. The delicate crown-like horns atop her head gleamed under the chamber's ethereal lighting. She was graceful, powerful, and completely unreadable. And unfortunately, still very, very interested in his condition. Daniel swallowed hard. This was going to be a long conversation. Royal examination. Captain Hayes, Zyra began smoothly, her voice like liquid silk, though Daniel could hear the subtle edge of curiosity beneath it. I trust you are recovering well? Daniel exhaled slowly. Physically? Yeah. Emotionally? Jury's still out. A flicker of amusement flashed across her face before she composed herself again. You are aware, she continued, stepping closer, that your reaction earlier was something our species has never encountered before? Daniel cleared his throat, feeling the heat creep back up his neck. Yeah, I gathered that. Zyra studied him intently, folding her arms as she considered him. The human reproductive response is far more visible than I anticipated. Daniel nearly choked. Your Majesty, please. I really don't think we need to discuss. She ignored him completely. Tell me, Captain, she mused, tilting her head slightly. Does this reaction occur often among human males, or only under specific circumstances? Daniel ran a hand down his face, praying for the ground to swallow him whole. It's, circumstantial. Her eyes narrowed slightly. Explain, he groaned. It's not random, okay? It's a response to... He hesitated, refusing to say the words. Zyra raised an elegant eyebrow. Two? Daniel inhaled deeply. Screw it. Attraction, Your Majesty. A beat of silence. A very long, very awkward silence. Zyra blinked once. Then again. Her posture stiffened ever so slightly. And then, something changed. The energy in the room shifted as realization dawned across her regal features. You mean to tell me, she said slowly, her voice uncharacteristically soft, that this response was a reaction to me? Daniel immediately regretted everything. Well... He stumbled over his words, scrambling for an escape. The Queen took a single, deliberate step closer. Her sharp violet gaze locked onto him, scanning his face as if seeing him in a completely different light. Fascination flickered in her expression, but so did something else. Something dangerous. Something intrigued. How interesting, she murmured, as if testing the word on her tongue. Daniel felt a fresh wave of panic flood his system. This doesn't have to be a thing, Your Majesty, he said quickly, stepping back. Totally normal human reaction. No need for concern. Let's just forget. I will not forget. His stomach dropped. Zyra took another step forward, and Daniel could swear the air grew warmer around them. It would be unwise, she continued, her voice now a notch lower, to ignore such a profound biological response. It suggests something significant. Daniel shook his head furiously. Nope, 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 nope. You're overthinking this, Your Majesty. And you are underthinking it, Captain Hayes. She was close now. Too close. Daniel felt his back hit the cold crystal wall, heartbeat thundering in his chest. Zyra's gaze held his firmly, unwavering, calculating, curious. You are attracted to me, she stated, her tone neutral, but not indifferent. Daniel swallowed. Hard. Abort, abort, abort. That is, not something I should comment on, he stammered. Zyra tilted her head, watching him with undisguised intrigue. But it is the truth. A long pause. Then finally, She stepped back, allowing Daniel to breathe again. "Very well," she said, her composed mass sliding back into place. "I shall consider this revelation carefully." Daniel exhaled in pure relief, nodding way too fast. "Great. Fantastic. You do that." She turned gracefully, striding towards the exit, before pausing at the doorway. Then, without looking back, she murmured, "I will summon you again soon, Captain. There is more I wish to understand." And just like that, she was gone. Daniel collapsed against the wall, raking a hand through his hair. He was so screwed. Daniel Hayes was in trouble. Not the immediate guns blazing, get shot by space pirates kind of trouble. No, this was a far more complicated kind of trouble. A regal, violet-eyed, alien queen-size trouble. Queen Zyra Talis had reacted strangely after realizing that his, involuntary biological response had been because of her. And instead of being horrified, disgusted, or just straight up killing him for it, she had looked at him like he was a puzzle she intended to solve. And then she had summoned him again, which was why Daniel now stood back in her throne chamber, pulse racing as the alien queen studied him with an intensity that made him sweat. For the past several minutes, Zyra had been pacing, lost in thought, occasionally glancing at him like he was an interesting new research specimen. Finally, she stopped and turned fully toward him. "Captain Hayes," she began smoothly, her voice a perfect blend of authority and curiosity. "I have spent time analyzing what I have learned from our previous interaction." Daniel swallowed thickly. "Yeah? And, what conclusion did you come to?" She tilted her head slightly. "That there is more to investigate regarding your species' attraction responses, particularly the link between emotional and physiological reactions." Daniel blinked. "The what now?" Zyra folded her arms, regal as ever. "I wish to determine whether your reaction was merely a primal instinct, or if something deeper is at play." "Oh no." Daniel felt his stomach drop. "Your Majesty, I really don't think—" She raised a perfectly sculpted silver blue hand, silencing him effortlessly. "I have arranged for a series of controlled experiments to observe your responses in different conditions." Daniel's brain stalled. "Experiments?" He stared at her, absolutely horrified. I'm sorry, experiments." Zyra nodded calmly, as if discussing something completely normal. "Yes, it is important to understand whether human males respond to simple external factors, or if a deeper psychological connection is required to trigger this reaction." Daniel felt every single alarm bell in his head going off at once. "Hold on, hold on, hold on, hold on." He raised both hands in frantic protest. "Your Majesty, I really don't think I need to be experimented on." Zyra narrowed her eyes slightly. "Captain, do you not wish for interspecies understanding to improve?" Daniel opened his mouth, then closed it. Damn it, that was such a diplomatic trap. If he said no, it would sound like he was actively working against diplomacy in interspecies relations. But if he said yes, then he was basically volunteering to let a stunningly gorgeous alien queen poke at his attraction responses like some kind of scientific study. There was no winning this. Zyra observed him closely, seemingly amused by his internal suffering. "I assure you, Captain, my methods will be entirely professional." Daniel snorted. "Professional?" Yeah, that was totally believable, considering this entire situation had started because she had physically prodded his issue with zero warning. But before he could even attempt another protest, Zyra stepped forward, gracefully walking toward him with that dangerously unreadable look on her face. "I have designed a series of tests," she continued smoothly, stopping just close enough that he could smell the faint floral scent of her skin. "They will help me determine if your response was unique to our previous encounter, or if it can be replicated in different circumstances." Daniel's throat went dry. "You designed tests," he echoed weakly. Zyra smiled ever so slightly. "Yes, and you will cooperate, Captain Hayes." Oh, he was doomed. Test number 1, the proximity experiment. Daniel sat rigidly in an opulent chamber, doing everything in his power to keep his pulse under control. This first experiment was apparently designed to test the effects of proximity, which in practice meant that Zira was standing unreasonably close to him, pretending not to be aware of the tension she was causing. She wasn't touching him, but damn if it didn't feel like she was. The elegant queen had positioned herself just behind him, observing something over his shoulder, her long hair occasionally brushing against his neck. Her voice was calm and professional as she spoke. I find it fascinating how humans are affected by simple physical closeness. Already your heart rate has increased. Daniel exhaled sharply. Yeah, because this is weird as hell, Your Majesty. Zira smirked slightly. Is it? Yes. Yes, it was. Especially because she smelled really, really good, and Daniel's brain refused to ignore it. Test number 2, the casual contact experiment. This one was even worse. The queen had gracefully seated herself beside him, resting a single delicate hand on his forearm, pretending to take notes on a glowing tablet. Daniel was dying inside. Your breathing pattern has shifted, Zira noted, not even looking at him. I assume this is another sign of involuntary response? Daniel clenched his jaw. You're literally touching me, Your Majesty. Of course I have a response. She tilted her head, her expression unreadable. Interesting. Test number 3, the whisper experiment. By this point, Daniel was convinced she was messing with him on purpose. This test, Zira murmured, leaning in close, is designed to measure your response to verbal and auditory stimuli. Her voice was low and silky, each word sending an unwelcome shiver down his spine. Daniel gripped the edge of his seat. Your Majesty, he muttered tightly, this is highly unnecessary. Zira smiled knowingly. But effective, wouldn't you agree? Daniel had never wanted to jump out of an airlock more in his life. The Queen's final conclusion. Hours later, the experiments finally concluded, and Daniel was mentally and emotionally drained. Zira Talis observed him curiously, arms folded. Your responses have been quite informative, Captain. Daniel groaned, rubbing his temples. Glad I could help, Your Majesty. She smirked slightly, clearly enjoying his suffering far too much. Then unexpectedly, she turned serious. This bond we share, it is not something I anticipated, she admitted, her violet eyes studying him closely. Daniel blinked, sensing a shift in her tone. Bond? Zira hesitated. In Xylarian culture, when two individuals share such pronounced physiological reactions, it is believed to be a precursor to a much deeper connection. Daniel froze. What kind of connection? He asked cautiously. Zira met his gaze, voice calm but firm. A soul bond, Captain. Daniel felt his stomach drop. Oh no. This was way, way worse than he thought. Daniel Hayes was beyond doomed. It was one thing to be caught in an awkward situation with a powerful alien queen. It was another thing entirely to be told that his very human biological response had apparently activated some kind of ancient Xylarian soul-bonding ritual. And the worst part? She wasn't joking. Queen Zira Talis stood before him, regal and composed, yet something unreadable flickered in her violet eyes. She studied him as if expecting him to process this revelation calmly. Daniel, however, was not calm. Whoa. Hold on. He took a very necessary step back. Did you just say soul bond? Zira gave a slow nod, her silver blue hair shimmering as she did. Yes, Captain. Your physiological reaction, coupled with the intensity of your emotional responses, has triggered an effect our people have long believed to be myth. Daniel let out a strained laugh. Yeah, see that right there? That's terrifying. Zira arched a perfectly sculpted eyebrow. Terrifying? Why? Daniel blinked at her. Why? Because, Your Majesty, he gestured wildly between them, I just found out I might be magically bound for life to an alien queen because my body had a very normal reaction to a very attractive woman. Zira's expression didn't change. You admit you find me attractive then? Oh no, Daniel froze, realizing exactly what he just walked into. Zira's lips curled in the smallest, most infuriatingly smug smirk. That's not the point, he groaned, running a frustrated hand through his hair. Her expression remained unreadable. It may not be the point for you, Captain, but for my people, a soul bond is sacred. It is irreversible. It links two beings permanently, physically, mentally, and emotionally. Daniel's stomach dropped. He had been hoping this was just some weird diplomatic misunderstanding, that maybe this soul bond thing was symbolic, or at worst a temporary situation. But no, it was forever. Okay, he said, holding up his hands like he was negotiating a hostage situation. Let's back up. Maybe there's a way out of this. A loophole. A royal unbonding ceremony? Zira shook her head. Such a thing does not exist. It is a permanent state. Daniel swore under his breath. Fantastic. Absolutely fantastic. So what? You and I are just stuck together now? The Queen finally sighed, pinching the bridge of her nose in mild exasperation. Captain, I understand your frustration. This was unplanned for both of us. However, a sudden chime interrupted her words. The chamber doors slid open, revealing a tall, heavily armored Xylarian warrior. Your Majesty, the warrior saluted sharply. We have a situation. Zira straightened immediately. Report. The warrior's deep voice rumbled through the chamber. The Draken fleet has entered Xylarian territory. Their warships demand an audience with the royal court. They claim to be here regarding the human. Daniel tensed. Wait. What? Zira's gaze flickered toward him before returning to the soldier. Did they specify their demands? The warrior nodded grimly. They claim the human has something of great value, and they are willing to wage war if we do not surrender him immediately. Oh, great. Now war was on the table. Daniel let out a sharp exhale. Can someone explain to me why an entire fleet of alien warships suddenly wants me dead? Zira's eyes narrowed dangerously. It seems we are about to find out. The Draken arrival. Minutes later, Daniel stood uncomfortably in the royal strategy chamber, watching as a massive holographic screen displayed the Draken flagship hovering menacingly over Xylarian space. The Draken were one of the most feared warrior species in the galaxy, hulking, reptilian humanoids with razor-sharp teeth, brutal combat skills, and a deep hatred for humanity. And now, apparently, they were here for him. Bring them through, Zira commanded. The transmission flickered, revealing the massive, scarred form of a Draken warlord. His scaled face twisted into a sneer the moment he laid eyes on Daniel. So, the human is still alive. Daniel stared back, trying not to show weakness. Yeah? Sorry to disappoint. The warlord bared his rows of dagger-like teeth. We demand his immediate surrender. Zira's posture stiffened imperceptibly, but her voice remained calm and regal. Explain your reasoning, Warlord Karath. The human is under my protection. Karath let out a low, growling laugh. Foolish queen, you do not understand what you have claimed. His piercing golden eyes flickered toward Daniel. That human carries something dangerous. Daniel blinked. News to me, buddy. What exactly am I carrying? The warlord's lips curled back. The Draken's lost genetic key. Daniel's brain broke. Excuse me? What now? Karath growled. Our people were once genetically enhanced before war stripped us of our full strength. The key to restoring our kind was lost until now. His golden eyes glowed. And it is within you, human. Daniel's pulse spiked. What? Zira turned to him sharply. Captain, explain. Daniel threw his hands in the air. I have literally no idea what they're talking about. Karath's growl deepened. Your human ancestors stole what was ours, and now it has awakened within you. You are a threat to our species. Daniel shook his head, completely lost. I don't even know what this is. How do you expect me to hand it over? You will submit to extraction. That did not sound like a fun time. Zira's voice turned cold as ice. You wish to perform a forced extraction on my bonded partner? Karath's eyes narrowed dangerously. Your what? A beat of tense silence. Daniel realized too late what she had just admitted. Karath snarled. You bonded with him? Zyra's violet gaze hardened. He is under my protection. The Draken Warlord let out a deep, guttural growl. Then you have declared yourself an enemy of the Draken Empire. The screen cut out. An alarm blared through the chamber. A royal officer rushed inside, breathless. Your Majesty! The Draken fleet is preparing to fire. Daniel's stomach dropped. Oh, great. So now I'm not just magically soulbound, I'm about to get us all blown up too. Zyra turned to him, expression unreadable. Then, to his absolute shock, she reached forward, grasped his hand, and said with deadly calm, If they wish to take you, Captain, they will have to go through me first. Daniel felt a shiver run down his spine, because for the first time, he believed her. The Draken fleet had declared war, and Daniel Hayes was at the center of it. Moments ago, the terrifying lizard warrior, Warlord Karath, had demanded his immediate surrender, claiming Daniel carried the genetic key to restoring their species' lost strength. Daniel didn't know how the hell that was possible, but Queen Zyra Talis had refused to hand him over. And now, the Draken warships were preparing to fire. Your Majesty! A royal officer's voice rang through the chamber. The enemy fleet is charging weapons. Our defenses are active, but they outnumber us 5-1. Daniel stared at the holographic display, feeling his pulse pound in his ears. Ships twice the size of Xylarian war cruisers loomed ominously over the planet, their cannons glowing an eerie red. This was about to get very, very bad. But through all of it, Zyra remained utterly calm. She stood tall and unshaken, her violet eyes locked onto the battlefield projection. They will not take him, she stated coldly. Daniel swallowed hard. I really appreciate the loyalty, Your Majesty, but maybe we should consider not dying in a massive intergalactic shootout? Zyra turned to him, her gaze sharp. Do you not understand, Captain? If they take you, they will either extract what is within you forcefully, which will likely kill you, or they will turn you into a weapon against your own kind. Daniel paled. That sounds terrible. Zyra's jaw tightened. It is, which is why I will not allow it. Then she turned to her fleet commanders. Prepare for the royal gambit. A hush fell over the room. Daniel blinked. Wait, the what now? Zyra gave him a brief, unreadable glance before addressing her officers. We will not fight them head-on. Instead, we will force their surrender by outmaneuvering their flagship. One of her admirals looked uncertain. Your Majesty, their firepower is vastly superior. They rely on brute force. We will use precision. Zyra turned back to Daniel, her voice quiet but firm. Captain Hayes, if we are to survive, you must trust me. Daniel exhaled, running a hand through his hair. Sure. What's a little more insanity at this point? The royal gambit begins within minutes. Zyra's plan was in motion. The Xylarian fleet moved fast, slipping into a coordinated formation around the Draken warships. The goal? Disable the flagship's command systems without engaging in all-out war. Daniel had somehow ended up in the command center, standing right next to Zyra as she directed the assault. He still wasn't sure how that happened, but at this point, he had bigger problems. The battle was chaos. Xylarian ships darted between enemy lines, evading heavy fire while targeting the Draken flagship's weak points. Daniel gritted his teeth as an explosion shook the deck. Just checking. Are we winning or dying? Zyra's voice was eerily steady. Both are possibilities. Fantastic. But then, a breakthrough. Your Majesty, a royal officer called out. We've disabled their main targeting array. Their cannons are offline. Zyra's lips curled slightly. Then let us end this. She turned sharply to Daniel. Captain, I need you to speak with Karath. Daniel choked. I'm sorry. What? Zyra's eyes narrowed. We must force his surrender, and as much as I despise admitting it, you are the key to this conflict. Daniel ran a hand down his face. Okay, fine, sure. Let's just call up the giant space lizard who wants to murder me. What could go wrong? The final standoff. Moments later, the Draken warlord's massive, snarling face appeared on the holographic screen. Karath looked furious. Human, he growled. You dare challenge us? Daniel let out a sharp exhale. Listen, buddy, I'd love to hand over whatever the hell you think I have. But here's the problem. I have no freaking clue what's inside me. Krath narrowed his eyes, scanning Daniel closely. Then something changed. The warlord's expression shifted, his eyes darkening with realization. It has already begun, he muttered. Daniel blinked. What's already begun? Krath's voice dropped into a low, grim tone. The awakening. A chill ran down Daniel's spine. What the hell does that mean? Krath exhaled slowly. The key is not an object, human. It is a genetic sequence, one that has remained dormant for generations. Daniel's breath hitched. Are you telling me I'm mutating? Sierra's gaze snapped to him sharply. Krath gave a slow, predatory nod. Soon your body will change. You will no longer be fully human. Daniel felt his stomach drop. Okay, this was officially the worst day of his life. A new reality. Hours later, the battle had ended. Xera's gambit had forced the Draken to retreat, but the larger issue remained. Daniel stood in the royal chamber, staring at his own reflection. He could already see the differences. His eyes looked sharper. His skin felt warmer. His muscles stronger. Whatever was inside him, it was waking up. He turned to Xera. So, what now? She stepped closer, her intense violet gaze studying him. Now, she murmured, we discover what you are becoming. Daniel let out a long, slow breath. Great, he muttered, because things weren't complicated enough already. Sierra smirked slightly. Do not worry, Captain. You will not face this alone. Daniel met her eyes, feeling the bond between them pulse. For better or worse, his fate was now tied to hers, and whatever happened next, they would face it together.